What's going on, gang? Red Channels here. And recently, Trump has just admitted the first few South African refugees into America. And oh boy, has it been revealing. Has this not been the mask off moment? You really see how the left feels about certain groups of people in this country. You really get to see their hypocrisy and their double standards on display with how they have reacted to these Afrikaners coming to America. Because, you know, the left are the first ones to like jump down your throat if there's a genocide going on somewhere else in the world that you're between two countries you probably learned about in history class and don't remember. Like they're the first ones to jump down your throat for not caring about that. And then now when it comes to white people in South Africa, they're a little skeptical. Is this really happening? Is this a conspiracy theory? Is experts say they aren't sure. How are the experts not sure? Don't they have criteria for this? You know, like the 10 stages of genocide by Gregory Stanton. Why can't they just apply that to the South Africa situation, the current situation, the current political moment in South Africa? Why haven't they done any studies on this? Is no one on this? Throughout all of academia throughout the West, no one's checking up on this issue. I swear, some university needs to hire me as an adjunct professor because I could talk all day about South African genocide studies in the 21st century. I think I may be privy to some information that academia has so far overlooked. Like this video right now on screen here, where each cross you're seeing along the roadside represents the life of an Afrikaner farmer that was taken in the name of DEI, shall we say. But needless to say, the powers that be are very uncomfortable with the idea of GOP voting evangelicals or Euro Americans generally identifying with the struggle of Afrikaners. They can't even really acknowledge that they're being persecuted because essentially what we're watching here in real time is the failure of a multicultural liberal democracy. We're literally witnessing a certain ethnic group getting expunged, having their land stolen, et cetera, et cetera. And the South African government hasn't done themselves any favors in this either. Like they've really kind of just exacerbated the situation by saying that like the the Afrikaners that leave South Africa are actually just escaping racial justice.
When you run away, you're a coward. And that's a real cowardly act.
It's like wasn't your intent just to seize the land? You know, like what other justice were you planning on administering to these people? Like what else were you planning on doing? But let's take a quick detour to get a sense of the milieu of politics in South Africa right now.
And all their inner circles here in Parliament who went to the United States to spin a narrative of victimhood of white people being murdered by blacks, mobilizing the United States government to interfere in the domestic affairs of our country. What measures, if any, have you used to scrutinize these treasonous acts of white right-wing racist extremist movements, especially in relations to how they are funded, so as to protect the imminent threat of civil war in South Africa? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kersa. Honorable Minister, your response, please.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chair. As indicated earlier, the law enforcement agencies are investigating the treasonous act of misinformation and also that which is provided for in the, I forgot the right naming of the act that talks about treason in the country.
So there you have it. Now for Afrikaners, it is treasonous to say in South Africa that you feel you are being discriminated against by the government. I mean, can we all just admit that we're at least at like stage 6 on the genocide scale here?
If you're losing your mind over Trump letting 59 South Afrikaners into the US as refugees, people who are fleeing land grab attacks and racial discrimination by the South African government, but you had no problem with 10 million plus illegal immigrants who entered the country under Biden's watch. You should probably reflect. I don't know, maybe the problem is that they're white, or that they entered legally, or that they are all families and not military-age men. I don't know. Just reflect. I hope it helps.
Liberals literally can't reflect about this situation. They have to create justifications and excuses and rationalizations of why it's okay to treat Afrikaners this way. Because if they don't, then their whole worldview would collapse. It would be over for them. Their minds would be shattered. And I haven't seen this brought up too much, but something I felt was worth pointing out is that a lot of the farmland that the South African government wants to seize from the Afrikaners is actually on land that was formerly occupied by Bushmen, which are like a different ethnicity. The people the people in charge of the parties like the ANC, the African National Congress, and that black nationalist communist party those are Bantus. They're not Bushmen, right? The area that the Afrikaners now have the farmland in is not an area that was traditionally inhabited by Bantus. See, when South Africa was first settled, the Cape was inhabited by the Bushmen, and then really the Bantus, who now comprise the majority of the modern South African state, were kind of all away in the kingdom of Zulu, sort of what in what is now Eastern South Africa. And for them to, or at least their descendants, to claim ownership of all the land. I mean, South Afrikaners have already been there for 400 years. So don't they have some sort of right to it? But like for people in the East who didn't even cultivate the land, who aren't even the actual indigenous people of the land before the Afrikaners, to then claim that land is absurd. And you know what? Call me a bleeding heart, but I could at least kind of get it if this were some sort of initiative to return the land to the Bushmen. Not a decision I would agree with, but at least it would be a sign that they were making an earnest attempt to preserve traditional African ways of life. Like they're like these hunter-gatherer people have a right to exist, and you should really be, I don't know, off building windmills and getting weed from cafes back in Holland or whatever Dutch people do in their free time. I don't know. But then you see headlines like this where the South African government is completely unable to manage the farms it already is in control of. So there's just tons of stuff that's getting squandered here. And I mean, issues of racial justice aside, it is one, not in dispute that the government of South Africa is widely known as being massively corrupt. And two, we already know what it looks like when indigenous people in a British colony in Africa seize the means of production and political power from colonists. There's another example of this. It is now called Zimbabwe, and it is not doing well. And I could see a person arguing that South Africa in its current state is more politically equitable, which is itself kind of doubtful because, again, it's as a general rule, it is massively corrupt. But overall, the fact of the matter remains, you still get something that is objectively less effective at delivering basic services to its citizens when you take a colony and then turn it into a heterogeneous democracy on the African continent. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a quick look at how some Americans are responding to the situation.
Good morning. This is for the South Africans who are going to be entering the United States. This is just a public service announcement. I just wanted to make you aware that the Black people who were students during apartheid, we're grandmas and grandpas now. and we have the air of Gen Z. One more thing. I also want to let you know that our president, he has Secret Service and you will not. I also want to tell you that Black people over here are empowered. These are just public service announcements. When you get here, sit your ass down and don't touch nothing, because you don't have Secret Service. Okay. Now have the day you deserve.
This lady's talking an awful lot of smack, because I bet you every one of those Afrikaners that comes over here will be strapped immediately. But the other kicker is South Africans all have this reputation, but over 70% of them voted for the end of apartheid. Over 70% of white South Africans were in fact in favor of extending the franchise. Excuse me, not over 70, around 68%. But anyways, they're just never going to be let off the hook for this, right? Even if there's like a 7 out of 10 chance that the Afrikaner coming here it would, voted or would have voted to extend the franchise, then why are you demonizing them? Why are you worried about them? Unless deep down it's because they've been treated unjustly. And you also have, on top of all of that, the insane response of the South African government to these people leaving, which is that they're attempting to escape justice, which is just so insane. I mean, these Afrikaners left. The government's seizing the farmland anyways. Isn't that what you wanted? Isn't you have the farmland now? Why are you saying that what other justice is there to administer, really? I mean, this all comes down to the fact that, unfortunately, they're always going to want more. And the average Bantu will still feel victimized and oppressed because their material conditions haven't improved, because South Africa has squandered what resources they've seized from their former colonists. Liberals created this fake little factoid which went around, which was saying that white South Africans still controlled 70% of the land of South Africa, but the reality was that they control 70% of the farmland specifically, not 70% of the land generally. You see the similar patterns of victim narrative among South African blacks as you do among African Americans. But now, with all the Afrikaners gone, who will they have to blame for their failures? Because the reality of the situation is that despite all its hostility towards Afrikaners, the South African government is still under mental slavery. They are still in a mindset where they feel their liberation and wealth depend on white validation and resources. And black people in America are in the same condition. This is why you have so many people wringing their hands over the end of DEI. You shouldn't believe in DEI. You should believe in do for self. And as a closing point, I'll just say that liberals are obviously very uncomfortable about this situation because, we have people here in the US that say that we're actually on stolen land. And South Africa is case in point when you take that type of logic to its extreme. The MSM doesn't want Westerners looking at the situation and going, could that be me if I become a minority? That would be, people would begin asking hard questions, and they can't have that. So this is also why they dispute whether or not this genocide is even going on in the first place. But anyway, that's the long and short of it. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you in the next one.